Welcome to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. I'm Greg Drevenstedt, editor-in-chief of Rider Magazine. Our guest today is Scott Calhoun, one of the co-founders of Butler Maps. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Good morning. Thank you.
Excellent. So you're in Texas, is that right?
Waco, Texas.
Waco, Texas. All right. And you said that you've got thunderstorms outside your window today.
I do. In fact, there's a lot of thunder going on just about now. So
okay. All right.
We'll pick up some of that, man.
Yeah, with these noise canceling mics, I've got somebody across the street from me getting a new roof, and you got thunderstorms, and I can't hear either one of them. So that's good. Or you can't hear them. So
can't hear a thing. That's good.
So a lot of our listeners who are motorcycle travelers, I'm sure they're familiar with Butler Maps, but they probably don't really know much about the backstory. So can you tell us how you and Court Butler, and it was Court's father, how did you guys start Butler Maps?
Okay, I'll try to keep this short as I can, but in 1996, I purchased some historic silver mines in Colorado, south of Eagle, Colorado. And I purchased those via Fred Butler. Fred Butler was a realtor there in Eagle. And I had gone into his office for something else, looking at some other property. And this fax was coming in while I was sitting there talking to him. And it was the listing for these silver mines. And so I said, oh, I'm interested in that. We popped up and we went out and looked at these things, and I bought them that day. But anyway, and those things, that was just the most fun I've ever had, was dealing with those silver mines. You could go in them and there was old equipment in there. They were 100 years old, and all this stuff. So anyway, Fred and I became best of friends. And I started staying with he and his wife, Joyce, many weeks a year. We would just hike around. We had a lot of fun. Fred was 14 years older than me. But anyway, while staying with Fred for those years, I was not a motorcycler, by the way. I had never ridden motorcycles to speak of until I was 54 years old. And Fred had this motorcycle sitting in his garage all these years. I stayed there for 10 years before I ever even talked to Fred about the fact that he might ride motorcycles.
Right.
And he says, yeah, me and my son Court, we ride around. And I said, okay, because motorcycles weren't on my radar. I just really didn't think of motorcycles. And so eventually Fred and Court were going to go on a ride one day. And this, I'd known Fred for 10 years. And as I say, we hadn't ridden before. And he says, why don't you rent a motorcycle and go with us, where we're going to go from Eagle to Cody, Wyoming. So I rented a motorcycle, rode 500 miles with Fred and Court. And it was just an incredible experience for me. And I said, and we just decided we'd just keep this going. So I promptly bought a 1200 GS in Denver, and we proceeded to ride all the mountain states. I mean, and this also included Court's wife, Tammy. She was on the back of Court's bike a lot of the time. But we rode all through Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Idaho in a short period of time. And when we were on the bikes one day, and we were headed down, I think it's Highway 141 in Colorado. It's the western side of Colorado.
Oh,
Dolores, yeah. It goes to Dolores Canyon.
Yeah.
And we weren't on the best part of it. We were just on a part of it before you get to Dolores Canyon going south, or, we hadn't gotten there yet. And in my mind, I was thinking, this is just the most incredible road, absolutely incredible. And I was thinking, how in the world would other motorcyclers from somewhere else ever find this road? Because there's so many roads. And little did I know, that's a pretty well-known motorcycle road, but I didn't know that there was no one on the road.
Sure.
And that's where the idea came from, to create just one map, that where motorcyclers could find people like me from flatland, like Texas, could come to Colorado, and all the other maps just look like Rand McNally. You can't tell one from the other. And we would have a code or a color or something on there that indicated that this was a great road, and that was the basis. We stopped at Driggs Mansion. I don't know if you know where that is.
Yeah.
It's an old rock house out there that it means it's really like a little tiny rock shelter that became famous for some reason. We stopped right there. And that's where I mentioned to Court and Fred and Tammy, I said, why don't we make a map of this? Because
Right.
Texas people have no idea this is here. And that's kind of the genesis of it. And then we just all started talking, and everyone had ideas. And before long, we started Butler Maps. It was Fred, Court, and myself. And that was the beginning of it.
So was Colorado the first state that you created a map for?
Yeah, we didn't know we'd ever create another map. We just thought,
Really?
let's do Colorado and see what happens. And yeah, we rode. Of course, it's nothing but fun, just
Sure.
riding
Yeah.
these roads and giving them a rating. By that time, we had decided there would be G1, G2, and G3. At the very beginning, we thought that it might just be a gold stripe. Wherever
Okay.
there was a great road, there would just be a gold stripe, as in gold, the best.
Right. Yeah.
And then it became hard to parse those. It was like, this is incredible, but the road leading to it is pretty good.
Right.
And
Right.
so that's where the G1, G2, and G3 came from. And that's worked very well because,
So could you explain that? People may not be familiar. So obviously G1s are your best roads. G2 is the next level down. It would be almost like maybe silver instead of gold. And then, I mean, they have a different color, but then G3. But how do you parse or rank a road based on G1, G2, or G3, or to not be ranked at all?
Court and I worked on that for a long time. It's really twistiness and elevation change are really
Okay.
what we're rating.
Okay.
And people think we're rating scenery sometimes. Really, we don't. I mean, we do just to keep the conversation going with
Sure.
people at rallies and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's scenery and all this, but it's really twistiness and elevation change. If you're on a very twisty road with a lot of elevation change, the scenery just comes with it. I mean,
Yes.
why
Understood.
are you twisting around like that?
Right. Right.
So you can think of a G1 is going to be the best paved motorcycle roads in the US or wherever we
Gotcha.
are, Canada.
Yeah.
Absolutely top line. And
Yeah.
everything that you know of that's famous is going to be a G1. Then the G2s are just a little less twisty with a little
Okay.
less elevation change. You can rail these a little more. I mean, you can get a lot of the G1s, you can't ride them like a sport bike rider wants to ride them, just railing everything. That's not, maybe they wouldn't want to do that. They're dangerous. G2, a little less severe. And G3 is just beautiful. It's just, think of a winding road along a creek in the woods,
Yeah.
and that's G3. Just
Nice.
enjoy yourself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, you did the first map for Colorado, and then how did you sell it or, get it out to people and ultimately start what became Butler Maps, which you've got maps for all over lots of states and
Yeah.
regions and everything. So how did that evolve?
Well, but by the time we got Colorado done, we knew that we were going to go ahead and do the mountain states. And so before we ever started selling Colorado, we went ahead and did all the writing for Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana. And we had all that data on the books. And so when we started printing the maps, we started selling them all at the same time, as I remember.
Okay.
And that was that would have been in May of 2010 or thereabout.
Okay.
And so that's that. And that was, we rolled them all out pretty much at the same time.
Right.
And
Right.
and they took off pretty well. I mean, BMW riders were the first to glom onto these things because
Yeah.
of the dual sport kind of nature of the bikes and things.
Right.
But
Well, I remember the first, I mean, I live in California. I remember the first Butler map I saw. I think we got a pack of them for a review or evaluation at the magazine. And I'm a map guy anyway, just I love the visualization of it. But what was really cool is like, they're really well made. They're tear resistant, they're not going to get wet and turn like sometimes the old school paper maps just felt like they would just become like tissue paper after a while. They're just going to fall apart and they're going to tear and
right.
do all kinds of stuff. But then, yeah, that you had roads that a way of ranking the roads and a lot of visual information, and it was a great way to put together a route, in terms of, hey, that's an area I've never been to, and I can kind of cut through and avoid, just ride in the dark. I can go pursue some of the best roads. Yeah.
Well, that's the idea. And it really did stem from, like Texas guys going to the mountains and not
Right.
knowing where the great roads are. And that's what it's all about. So if you were planning a ride to Colorado, like so many people do, if before Butler Maps, you would just look at a flat map that might be, and I use Rand McNally, any map, and
Sure.
all of the roads all are little black lines or red lines or whatever,
Right.
but
Right.
and some of them you can see are twisting around a little bit, but those
Yeah.
might be, we don't know whether they're dirt or paved. So we took that mystery out of it. You don't have to do any of that research. The roads are right there. You see yellow, red, and orange. Those are
Right.
the colors. And we use those colors because the map itself has so many colors on it. Like
Sure.
freeways are one color. And there's no magic to those three colors except the yellow for gold. It's
Right.
just that's what shows up on the map better.
Right. Okay. Gotcha. Well, before this interview, I was looking at your website, and it's been a while, and you guys have a huge collection of maps now. I mean, like I said, you got most of the western states. I would say a lot of maybe parts of the Midwest. It's not really known for motorcycle roads, so that you may not have one for, say, Indiana, but there's some for the Mid Atlantic and Northeast. But then we also got maps for regions like Appalachia, Ozarks. So you've got like Texas Hill Country and Big Bend. That's in your neck of the woods. And the interesting thing is, I did a trip to Hill Country last year and rode the Twisted Sisters. I didn't have the Butler map with me, but I didn't, I knew about those three roads, but I didn't know where else to go. And so I did go down to Big Bend. But yeah, having a map to where it's like, because, I would think the maps would almost like, in a place like Colorado, I mean, the map would be very useful, but there's tons of great roads. I don't want to say you can't go wrong, but in a state like Texas, it's such a big state, and the good roads are probably fewer and farther between. You really need something like a map to really like, okay, here where I can go, and not, I don't want to say waste your time, but you really just want to, if you want a limited time for a vacation or a motorcycle trip, you really want to pack as much into the day as you can. So yeah.
Well, that's right. And Texas Hill Country, what a great surprise that was to us. The order and the reason we did Texas Hill Country at all was because I live here. And in the winter, when you're riding the mountain states in the high country where the great motorcycle riding is, well, the winter pretty much gets blocked out,
Right.
as far
Right.
as riding. And that's what
Right.
we do. We ride every road before we put it on a map. So in the wintertime, I just said, shoot, let's just do Texas Hill Country because it's right here. Surely
Yeah.
there's enough roads down there to
Yeah.
make a map. Well, I wasn't sure of that, to tell you the truth, because G1s, how many G1s are you going to find in Texas?
Right.
Well, there's some, and in fact, Highway 335, 336, and 337, the Twisted Sisters, those are actual G1s. I mean, they're
Yeah.
excellent, incredible,
Yeah.
and then but when we rolled out Texas Hill Country, I was still kind of questioning, are people going to buy this? And it blew the doors off. We had
Really.
never, it was the best selling map that we had up to that
Yeah.
time. I
Yeah.
mean, and there's a part of that reason is that we had a customer base by then. And
Sure.
so they were looking at us anyway. And Colorado was a big seller, of course, but Texas Hill Country, because we were known by then, we couldn't believe it. We couldn't print those things fast enough.
Right.
And Texas Hill Country has like the least number of G1s of any map that we've ever made. And then the Ozarks, by the way, immediately went and made the Ozarks because it's also in my neighborhood.
Right.
And
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's excellent.
Well, it's interesting that Texas Hill Country, we have a story from that we published in the magazine in like 2013, so it's over a decade old, and it's still one of our most popular stories on our website about those three roads, the Twisted Sisters. And yeah, I would have to say, coming from California, they're good, they're good roads, but there's parts of it where it's like you can just ride one fantastic road after another if you just go up the coast in the mountains of California or Colorado or something like that. But I think, maybe because if Texas doesn't have a lot of great riding, but you've got big cities, you've got Dallas and San Antonio and Houston and Austin and people coming from Oklahoma and other states, I think it's a big draw. And then it's also pretty motorcycle friendly. I know the little town of Leakey, kind of like right in the middle of the Twisted Sisters, has got a couple of motorcycle friendly, like kind of bars and stops where you can get your t-shirts and all that stuff. And Ozarks has those sorts of places as well. Just kind of like the tail of the dragon. You can go get your stickers and your t-shirts and your hats, and you can get your photos taken and all that stuff. So yeah, it is. It's a very popular destination. It seems like for motorcyclists of all
Well,
kinds, especially the Harley crowd. The V-twin crowd, they really like it there. So
Well, that's right. And you pretty much nailed it. The Texas Hill Country is sort of a postage stamp size
Yeah.
thing in Texas. When you get there, it's really I don't think it's so much about the roads as it is about having fun
Yeah.
and drinking beer. You know,
Yeah.
the Texas Hill Country is a lot of fun. I mean, you
Yeah.
got Fredericksburg and Kerrville and some of these places, Lakey, the town that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So people go there, but it's about having a good time in other ways than just riding the
Yeah.
motorcycle. That's all I can figure. And I mean, on the back of the Texas Hill Country map, I hadn't looked at it in a long time, to tell you the truth, but I think we have some of the things that you can do there. And what's the town that Willie Nelson? Oh
Luckenbach,
goodness,
that
Lukenbach.
little tiny. Yeah.
Oh my
Luckenbach.
gosh. I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time there and I knew Bobby, the girl that ran the thing.
Yeah.
We set up our maps there and they sold the heck out of them. It
I
was,
bet.
the Texas Hill Country map and the Ozarks map. We had them both there. They were one of the biggest distributors we had. And also, there was a cafe in Marble Falls, Texas, and I was working out of that cafe in the
The blue
mornings
bonnet,
making
the
Blue
one with
Bonnet.
the with the good pie.
You go, Greg. When you
Yeah.
walk in, that meringue on that pie is
Yeah.
this
Exactly. Oh,
tall.
yeah. Yeah.
How
Fantastic.
how do you
Uh,
deal with that mentally? You can't go past that. You
I
have to
know.
walk
Yeah.
past it to get in.
Yeah.
But the guy that owned the Blue Bonnet watched me working on these maps in there in the morning. He says, "My God, that is so much fun looking." I had like the Colorado map and all
Sure.
these laid
Yeah.
out, and I was in there every morning. So he said, "Do you think we could sell those maps here?" And I said, I don't know. Let's sure if you're willing to try, we can. Well, bottom line is Blue Bonnet was one of the top 3 or 4 places for buying our maps anywhere in the
Yeah.
nation. It was
Yeah.
unbelievable. We were sending them constantly. He he took down in the hallway. When you go in there and you're in that hallway,
Yeah.
you're familiar with that? Yeah, the side entrance where the motorcyclists come in. There's a
Yeah.
hallway there, and it's lined with pictures of all sorts of things, including the guy's family. And so he said at one time he said to me, he said, "Scott, let's just take down those pictures of my family and put up a Butler motorcycle map frame there so people can look at it while they're waiting in line here."
Nice. Nice.
And
Yeah.
that was like peas from heaven. I said, "I think I'll do that." I went and got one framed and it sits
Nice.
there and it says available at the checkout. And they right
Sure.
at the checkout thing, they had the map sitting there.
Yeah.
So anyway, that and Lakey, by the way, there's a motorcycle place there where we sold a lot of maps. Just
Yeah, the Frio Canyon motorcycle stop or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, that's a big
yeah,
place. They sell a lot of merch. So, oh, Leaky. It's funny because it's spelled Leakey. I thought it was leaky, but like a
Well,
leaky
no,
boat. Leaky.
I think most people pronounce it leaky when you look at it, but down there, most of them say Lakey.
Yeah,
So I
that's
just
fine.
kind of
Yeah,
go with it. Yeah.
I get that. But it makes sense because to have those because Luckenbach, the Blue Bonnet. I mean, those are destinations where people, if they're going to go to that part of Texas, hey, I want to go stop there. I want to go eat there. I want to go have pie at Blue Bonnet.
Yeah.
I want to go get some pictures taken at Luckenbach and listen to some music. So that's great. I could see that as being a destination, and then people want to be able to plan their trips. And I like I'm one of those people that I don't use GPS much because I'm in Southern California. I've just been lived here long enough. I know most of the great roads. I'm not going to get lost. But
Hmm.
is that the way to combine both maps and GPS, where people can plot out routes if they want to? But there's just nothing like you're talking about being, working on one of these maps. You spread it out on a big table. If you're with some friends, you're at a diner, or if you're at home and you spread it out on your dining room table, and you can really let your mind kind of wander and visualize what this area is. There's no way you can do that on Garmin Basecamp on your computer or a GPS. Sure, you can plot a route and you can have something to follow, like, hey, here's the places I want to go and turn here, but there's nothing
Hmm.
like having a map, and I think they really complement each other. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's you pretty much told it better than I can. That is what they're about. We do not expect at all that people will just use these maps by themselves.
Right.
Some do,
Yeah.
but we expect that you will have a GPS device of some sort, iPhone,
Yeah.
but you can only see, I mean, an iPhone's this big and
Right.
and
Right.
you can only see and even the image I'm looking at you now on an iPad,
Yeah.
okay, there's only so much space there at a time.
Right. Right.
A big picture is the idea. And yes, campsites, my mind, when we were coming up with the map concept was really about people sitting around a campfire or at a campsite, and you
Yeah.
got 3 or 4 people huddled over the map and looking at it. And Court and I and Fred sometimes have never, you just never feel better than to walk into some cafe in the middle of nowhere, and there's a couple or 2 or 3 motorcyclers with a Butler map open on the table.
Right.
And we've
Right.
had this plenty of times. And
Nice.
in Southern California was
Sure. Yeah.
my memories. So they had them open and they're sitting there talking. And believe me, we rarely go up and say anything to them. We're
Yeah.
not going to go up there and say, by the way, I made that map there. It's like, we just kind of watch and
Right.
say, gosh, that's incredible that
That's
this is
cool.
really happening the way it should.
Yeah. Well, so another set of maps that you guys have got, that I want to ask about is, the Backcountry Discovery Routes. We've had Ina Thorne and Tim James on. I've interviewed them a couple times on the podcast
Mhm.
for every one of the Backcountry Discovery Routes, and I think they've got like they're up to 12 or 13 full routes that either go through a full state or like a region, like the Mid Atlantic or the Northeast. Then
Mhm.
they've got these shorter BDRX loops that are, most of them you can do a backcountry discovery route, full route in about a week. BDRX or maybe 2 to 3, 4 days. But you guys have created maps for all of these, which is a great resource. So how did you guys start working with the Backcountry Discovery Routes group?
Well, Tom Meyer and Paul at Turatech and all the guys over there, we were real friendly with them. And when the idea came up, I think Paul may have had the idea. I don't know. But we immediately were working with them. Like they knew that we made the maps and they said,
Right.
let's do it was early. And so it was like an experiment. It was just a fun thing. Maybe let's go try this. Everybody wanted to do it anyway. And so Court Butler mainly worked with them, and I just kind of
Sure.
piddle around. I don't do much dirt riding, and my hands were full riding the paved roads. That's what I
Right.
did. I rode most of the paved roads for our maps, or at least a whole bunch of the paved roads you see on the maps. I
Sure.
rode those, and we had others riding them. But the dirt roads never, it didn't appeal to me because it was too slow. I
Sure.
like to go.
Yeah, I
And
get you.
yeah,
Yeah.
and also I just don't, the sand issues, water issues. I haven't ridden that much dirt, and
Yeah.
I just did. But anyway, Court was a big player with BDR and the creation of the maps. He had a lot to do with everything and was on the board for a while. So,
Right.
and they do an incredible job. There's 13 of those. I think there are 5 BDRX now.
Yeah.
And then along the same lines as BDR, we have an adventure series, and I think we have goodness, 6 of those now.
Okay.
That's dirt maps too.
So I saw that, for example, on your website, there's a new 2025 adventure map, and didn't really look closely at some of the details. So, of these adventure maps, what are they focused on? Are they focused on particular areas, or how do they work?
Yeah, they're states.
Okay.
So by the way, the thing that says 2025 on it is a little special edition thing we did, and
Okay.
it was the people that work at Butler Maps. We all kind of pitched in our favorite rides,
Ah, okay.
and it's like a $5 item. It's not expensive, and it's just something we did for fun. And maybe we sold a lot of them. People
Right.
that order another map, they might pick one of those up. So that's what that is.
Okay.
But the adventure series, we have a lot of the mountain states. We got Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, and maybe another one,
Yeah.
Idaho.
Gotcha.
So those are ready. And the way that came about was on our G1 maps, we included on most of those some dirt roads. In other
Right.
words, we just indicate those on there for the dual sport riders that might be interested. We didn't go very thoroughly, but there's a lot of them on the G1 maps, and there's a
Right.
list of them on the back.
Right.
Okay, well, that was popular, and so we decided, why don't we just make that a bigger deal and
Sure.
start and create a map that's just for dirt.
Right.
And so they're A1, A2, and A3 instead of G1, G2,
Ah,
and G3.
okay.
The same colors, the yellow,
Nice.
red,
Yep.
and orange, same
Yeah.
colors. When you're on there, it's just the G1's the great
Right.
dirt, the next
Right.
best dirt, and the third
Yep.
best dirt.
Right.
And boy, they're popular. They really are. They're very,
Well,
very
I
good.
was about to say, I mean, even with the BDR group and the sales of big dual sport and adventure bikes, yeah, it's been a big growing community and scene, and yeah, so people want to have the resources to know where to ride, and it's harder to find good dirt roads than it is paved roads, perhaps in some ways, because There, at least here in California, a lot of the dirt roads are on national forest land, and some of them are gated, and some of them are not, and access is different. But if you've got people, especially riding, GSs or other adventure bikes, they may be riding pavement most of their trip, but then in Colorado, they're like, well, we want to go up over this one pass, but that pass, like Engineer Pass or something, isn't paved. So you want to know
Right.
how to connect the dots, between some good roads. So that's great. Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of it is getting people from perhaps one G1 paved road
Right.
to the next one, and you want to have a little adventure along the way, if
Yeah.
you're on a dual sport. And that we speak of that on the maps, and people do use them that way.
Mhm.
And so
So you said that you've ridden a lot of the for some of the G1 maps, the paved road maps. You've ridden most of the roads, good roads in a state. How long does it take you guys to do your evaluation and rating for an entire state?
when we first started, Fred and Court and I rode everything together. We were three motorcycles, just
Yeah,
like that, little pack. And we were rating them as we go. Fred didn't get in on the rating. That was myself and Court. It was
sure.
unbelievably complicated when we started. I won't even go into that. That'd take 30 minutes. In other words, the way we would do it, we would have to stop after each rating and either write it down or put in little information on our phones. So it was
Right.
ridiculously slow. But we rode all of the mountain states and Southern California as a group.
Wow.
And then we were really starting to make maps. A lot of the work needed to be done in the office. And is Court's the very organized, artistic guy. He's
Yeah.
so good at what he does. So he went, we had our office by then, and he was in there working with Benchmark Maps. That's who Thad Linker over there. That's
Yeah.
who creates our base maps. And he was working on that every day. And I started doing the writing. I was just gone all the time.
Yeah.
And so that after Southern California, we finished that as a group. Then I went to Texas Hill Country, then the Ozarks. And I did have some help on Texas Hill Country and the Ozarks, but since I lived there, I did most of that. And then, as I recall, we went back to Northern California and Oregon, and we really just jumped around. Southern Appalachia, we just decided then we needed to be in the East, give
Sure.
those 100 million people over there somewhere to ride.
Exactly. Yeah.
My gosh, did Southern Appalachia? That was the next big surprise.
Oh,
Holy mackerel. I mean,
fantastic roads.
it
Yeah.
was, SoCal was good, but actually Southern Appalachia blew it away. And
Yeah.
we didn't really do our best advertising in SoCal because we just were bogged down. There was just we didn't have any help. We didn't really have any people. It was
Yeah.
Court and myself
Right.
and,
Right.
and our very talented map people, Thad Linker and Ellen, who works with us. She's a graphic designer, and the people that do the actual making of the maps, really good. But when Southern Appalachia came out, my gosh, it's like, holy, it was like Texas Hill Country
Right.
again.
Right.
And we didn't know to expect that. I knew
Yeah.
Southern Appalachia was good, but boy, big part of it is Florida is just a flat
Right.
surface.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we were making the Southern Appalachia to give those flatlanders somewhere to go. We
Right.
saw a lot of maps in Florida. By the way, I think Florida has the third number of registered motorcycles in the nation, something like
It's
that.
big. Yeah.
And there's no hills, so
Right.
they
Yeah. I
they
think the
creep
highest
up.
point in Florida is like 600 feet or something.
Yeah, you can throw a rock over it,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and then there's Southern Appalachia, this
Yeah.
big beautiful thing on our map. It's just looming there for these
Right. Right.
Florida guys, like, oh boy. And
Well, I
so
mean,
that was good.
that area, I mean, it's like Tail of the Dragon. Everybody wants to go ride that. And then, of course, there's the Blue Ridge Parkway, which is, almost 500 miles of stunning beauty. And it's kind of a low speed limit. But the thing is, Blue Ridge Parkway goes along a ridge. And then there's all these roads that sort of go down from there. They go down and they wander through the little hollers. And, California is known for its great roads, but there's so much public land that, like, for example, just inland from where I live is Los Padres National Forest. Well, there's like one or two roads that go through it because it's a big open national forest land. But in Appalachia, it's full of people and they've got to be roads to connect little towns and communities and so forth. So there's roads in what seem like some really unlikely places, and they are some of the twistiest, tightest,
Oh yeah,
corkscrew roads you've ever ridden. Yeah, it's really fantastic.
I don't know how many G1s are in Southern Appalachia, but it's amazing. and it's absolutely a wonderful place to go ride.
Yeah.
There's, I don't know what it is. There's something unique about Southern Appalachia, and when you get to not so much in Southern Appalachia as much as the next, like the Southern Mid Atlantic and
Right.
in the Northern Mid Atlantic, those states. I'm not sure this is really what happened, but it seems like those were stagecoach type roads.
Mhm.
It's very different when
Yeah.
you look at our Southern Appalachia. I mean, Southern Mid Atlantic and the Northern Mid Atlantic maps, it's just so thick. The roads that we have rated are just like a spaghetti bowl,
Right.
in
Right.
particularly northern mid Atlantic. And I rode by far most of that of those all those states, the southern mid Atlantic, northern mid Atlantic. Those you're just twisting all the time.
Yeah.
Every part of me got wore out every day. Just throttle, clutch, everything. And when you look at those maps, which I've got them all laid out behind this, I'm above. I have my own little private area here above my garage, and there's
Nice.
maps everywhere in here. I don't think you can see those back there,
No.
but they're just everywhere. And I was looking at the mid-Atlantic maps this morning thinking, my God, it's just hard. Looking at them is
Yeah.
kind of hard for riders because there's so much there. But
Right.
it seems like those roads were created in a period of time when they got paved eventually, but everybody put a stagecoach road or some type of road everywhere, and they finally paved them all. They're thick.
Yeah.
A lot of G1s in there, a lot of G1, G2 roads in that area.
Well, something that some people may or may not realize it. So in our magazine, starting in late 2020, early 2021, I knew Blake Connor through Cycle World, and he used to work for Rever as a marketing director.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's a connection between Rever and Butler Maps. Like the G1, G2, and G3, and some of the other designations are available on the Rever trip planning on the app and in the on the website. So you can actually see those and put together routes, online through Rever. But so what was the sort of connection between you guys? I know Rever was, you were talking about Eagle, Colorado. Rever is based there. It was kind
Yeah,
of a
we
spin-off.
we were one thing. Justin Bradshaw came to work for Butler Maps about a year after we started, I would say.
Okay.
And Justin was great. He met Court Butler in the Yeti's coffee shop in Eagle. They were
Okay.
just they didn't really know each other, but he'd come over. He would see Court working there, and he got in, and they got to talking. And he got interested in what we were doing. He's a big motorcycle rider. He and his brother raced motorcycles. His dad's a big motorcycler. His uncle is too. And so it was made for him. So he
Sure.
comes to work for us as a marketing guy. He was our marketing person, and he was good at it. Justin's a really good guy. And eventually, though, I think in 2016, it came time to separate these two companies because
Yeah.
the digital version and the paper maps so different.
Right.
And we had Justin and we had another partner by that time named Mark Repke, and those two guys, we just spun it off. I mean, we
Gotcha.
still are involved in the ownership very slightly of
Yeah.
Rever, and we've worked together all through the time. But Rever, it puts our maps, the colorful maps, in a
Yeah.
digital format,
Right.
and then you can see them, and you can just ride from one to the next. Your little blue dot is just riding across a
Yeah.
G1. It's incredible. But Rever does so many things. I
Sure.
mean, you can use it anywhere in the world, and so many of their riders are somewhere other than the U.S. So it's not
Right.
just the Butler map colors that matter. They do a lot of things very well.
Well, it's interesting. Whenever I go into Rever to, I create some routes for some of those travel stories we put in Writer Magazine, and I'll pull it up, and then yeah, like I'll see the yellow, orange, and red, and where some of these roads are going to go through, and so it's just a different way to visualize it, and it's
Mm-hmm.
but they also, we were talking earlier about, it's a good way to have the Butler Maps and your GPS or the Rever app on your phone. Like there's even, like I was on the Honda Goldwing 50th anniversary press ride they did back in March, and we were at Barber Motorsports Park. We rode down through Alabama into the coast of Florida and then over to Daytona Bike Week, and they had the Rever route, that was we were on, and we had Apple CarPlay, so the navigation's up on the main screen. I don't even have to have it on a phone, and yeah, it was great. It's good. So So,
Yeah.
one other question, I was again looking at some of your maps. I'm always envious to look at this full catalog that you guys have got. You've got a couple of maps for Route 66. I saw that there's like it's maybe a two-part map. It's a
Yeah.
2,500-mile route from Chicago to LA. 2026 will be the 100th anniversary of Route 66, or the creation or designation
Hmm.
of Route 66. So a lot of people are probably going to be riding it between now and then, or next year. So how did you guys put together the Route 66 map? Because I know it's the route, the original Route 66 isn't intact in all places. So,
So say that. That map was created in my house here in Waco. It's the only one that I've ever done pretty much not by myself because I don't do the graphic design, but all
sure.
of the facts and information on there I gathered up myself. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, I guess. It's
Wow.
ridiculous. I did it
Sure.
on my dining room table over 6 or 8 months. And and by the way, glad you mentioned that anniversary. I was unaware of that, and
Yeah.
we have a reprinting. We're going to update the Route 66 map. I don't when is the
It's 20
anniversary?
2026 will be the 100th anniversary of when it was, I guess, designated, official US Route 66. So yeah,
Hmm.
the 100th anniversary is coming up, and it's a big deal because we do some travel stories and there's some tourism. So we're actually, our August issue will be a Route 66 themed issue. So I want to make sure that we put something in our, news section about your map, and maybe I can work with you to get some details so people can see like, hey, if
Yeah.
this is something that you've never, it's always, I mean, it's considered the ultimate American road trip, the mother road, all that stuff. People are
Mhm.
going to ride it, having a good set of maps to help them find their way, since the route isn't, the old official route isn't there anymore, or parts
Yeah,
of it.
it's just a nostalgic ride. If you just ride Route 66, you're just getting nostalgia, and particularly through Oklahoma and that area
Yeah,
where Route 66 is everything. Everything says Route 66,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it is. You see older buildings that are still look like they did in the 1930s or
right.
whenever it was so popular. I guess 1926, as it turns
Yeah,
out. But what we did with Route 66 is so we knew that motorcyclers weren't going to want to ride straight and level all day, every day, or thought that. And so we just took our G1 maps and created loops that are off of Route 66. You
oh
might
cool.
ride 20 miles from Route 66, particularly in the Ozarks, well, all the way along. We have a
Yeah,
lot of those loops, and that gives you something to do
right.
besides just ride. You might get enough nostalgia after 10 days of riding on Route 66. It's so you've got things to do. They're like
Yeah,
little day trips, and
nice.
so that's part of the Route 66, and it's been very popular. And I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah.
We'll get on the horse a little bit here.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I know there's some folks are getting gearing up for the 100th anniversary. I don't know what, because again, every state, and then of course tourism bureaus can be at the city or county level or state level, and so I think there's probably some stuff that's going to be going on because, there's it starts in Chicago, so there's parts of Illinois that, again, there's the Route 66 museum is in Illinois, and there are Route 66 sort of places all along the route. Like you said, there's kind of some of the kitschy, diners or motels or something in certain areas. You're talking about Oklahoma. I know there's quite a few in some parts of Arizona. Some of the Burma shave signs are have been
Yeah,
restored. It's like
right.
it's kind of like a preservation or restoration sort of thing. It's pretty big in some areas. So I've never ridden I mean, I've ridden the route through Arizona. I mean, of course, a good chunk of it in Arizona is Interstate 40, so that's kind of boring. But I've ridden some parts of it in California, and then it ends. The official western terminus of Route 66 is the Santa Monica Pier, which is, of course, really
Yeah.
famous. It's got the amusement park on there, the fishing pier sign that everybody's seen photos of.
Mhm.
So yeah, so
We
I
we did put on that map, by the way. You mentioned some things that jarred my memory. Is we have a list of all of the motels along the way and numbers and identifiers along the way.
oh cool,
So I verified at that time, at the time that map was made, that all
yeah,
of these were open. Because a lot
right,
of things open and close there.
right,
And then we also put all the cafes and restaurants, the old ones,
you're right,
and it was all this was current at the time the map was made, and then a bunch of other points of interest. There's
sure,
just so many things that people created along the route that
right,
sort of are based on Route 66,
right,
and so there's a lot to do there. You're not going to do everything that's on that map in
Right,
one
right.
trip. I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, I
And by
mean,
the way,
even if
another
you
thing, Greg, I was
go
going
ahead.
to mention, because I'd forgotten about this. We are planning to make the Blue Ridge Parkway a map of the Blue Ridge Parkway,
Oh, nice.
an individual map, and probably Natchez Trace also. And
Also
so these
nice.
will
Yeah,
be, and I don't know if we'll pick up Skyline all the way from Front Royal down or not, but it'll
yeah.
be at least Blue Ridge from Waynesboro down to where it ends south there. And so we're working on that. It'll be a little bit like the Route 66. That's what brought it to mind. We're working
Nice.
on that now. I don't know
Yeah.
when it'll come out.
Well, and that's, the thing that some people don't realize is to ride the Blue Ridge Parkway, I think there's like one or two gas stations at like at an official sort of stop, but most places to either stay in a motel, eat at a restaurant, or get gas, you got to get off the parkway. It's mostly is literally a park, except for a couple of the National Park Service original places like the Pisgah Inn or something like that in North Carolina, which I think has you can stay there, has a restaurant, has a gas station, but there's not many of those on there. So if you're going to go ride the whole Blue Ridge Parkway, you need to figure out where you're going to get off the road to go get gas and to go get something to eat. And then, of course, as we were talking about, there's all these fantastic roads that just kind of like they just sort of like just fall away from the ridge, go down to lowlands, and there's some fantastic roads all that feed off of the Blue Ridge
I
Parkway.
don't
So yeah,
know. I don't know. It's Blue Ridge Parkway is unbelievable.
yeah,
It is when you're on it, including Skyline. They ought
yeah,
to just take over the Skyline, call it Blue Ridge. But anyway,
yeah,
as you're riding, I've ridden the whole thing. Of course, it's 45-mile-an-hour speed limit, so
right,
that's distracting in itself. But when you're on it, very few places do you see civilization. You
right,
see incredibleness. And as far as you can see, you really don't see any, you don't see the towns.
right.
And I was wondering, how is this even possible to do 500 miles or whatever it is and not, and just, it's just amazing, beautiful the whole way. It overwhelms you after a while. You kind of have to stop and say, I got to rest. There's too much
Right.
visual input going on
Right,
here.
right,
And they've
right.
got their little rock wall to the sides. It's
Yeah.
just amazing. It's beautiful.
Well, I mean, it just the engineering, and I mean, it was one of those kind of works progress administration type things where
Yeah.
where there's some tunnels, there's some bridges, and some things that I mean, some of them were built in more modern eras, as they've had to update it and so forth. But there's not a single stoplight,
That's
or stop
crazy.
sign on the whole thing. If you turn off the road or go to a pullout, or one of the there's and the scenic lookouts are everywhere. I mean, there you
Oh
can
God, they're
just
great.
if you stopped at every one of those, you'd never get very far. But yeah, that's the thing you sort of forget is that yeah, you really to see a town, you kind of have to look off of one of the lookouts down below. They're not up high, and then there's
Yeah.
really not many actual even civilization. Like there's not many buildings or structures. Like I said, this Pisgah Inn, because I'm more familiar with this North Carolina Southern Inn. I know that's there, but that's been there for a long time. There's a couple of other places that are maybe right off the Blue Ridge Parkway, but most of it you don't see anything but just I mean, again, you just see mountains and can see valleys down below and just really it's really well maintained how they manicure I mean the grass is really well maintained and manicured, and it
Yeah.
just every curve is perfectly radius, and then like off of well it's not really off the Blue Ridge Parkway, but makes me think of there's also something called the Cherahela Skyway, which like every single curve on that road is like perfectly radius. It's like they're none of them are like decreasing radius or anything. They're all perfect. So
Oh,
yeah,
that is true. We could put in a plug for Cherahala right
yeah,
here. That is when I was in that area, there's the dragon's tail of the
yeah,
dragon, whatever you
yeah,
want to call it. It's great, but it's pretty crowded. You get over, just go a few miles and get on Cherahala.
yeah,
Wow,
yeah,
it's like you say, the turns are predictable.
yeah,
Not so on
absolutely,
Tail of the Dragon, but
yeah,
I thought it was an amazing ride, really close by. That's what I wanted to
right.
do was that ride. And so yes, but Blue Ridge, I think if you could have enough fuel, you could drive the whole thing and not stop.
Yeah,
I don't know
yeah.
that there's a place where you
There's
have to
yeah,
stop the
there's
whole
not a
way.
stop sign or stop light on the entire route. I mean, I think
It's
that's the point. You can exit the road and there's little places you can stop and do stuff, but just the main parkway, I'm pretty sure 479 miles, just like nonstop. Yeah, so if you got
mm.
a big GS Adventure tank on it and you ride really conservatively, you could get a lot of it done in one stretch.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's right.
um, So we're talking about the tail drive. Yes, often very crowded. I was there last year for a press launch, and they had just resurfaced the entire,
Mm,
11-mile stretch of it, and it's like billiard table smooth. And if you get out there early in the morning, you can kind of get it. It's not the weekends and stuff. Early in the morning, you can beat the crowds, and it's
yeah.
still a great road. It's a lot of fun. So, well, hey, we could sit here and talk all day about great roads. You've obviously ridden way more than I have. It sounds like it's probably been a very satisfying and enjoyable thing to like, hey, I'm gonna have to ride all the good roads in this state or in this region or in this
Hmm.
area. I'm quite envious of being able to have the time and ability to do something like that. So big fan of your maps. I want anybody who has not seen a Butler map, you can go to butlermaps.com. You can buy their full sets of maps there. And a lot of them, there's the BDR maps, there's this individual state maps, the region maps, the Route 66 maps. You guys are on all the social media channels. You can just search for Butler Maps and you'll find it. So Scott, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I really appreciate you sharing the backstory. I've always, like I said, I've known about and used Butler Maps, but I didn't really kind of know the origin story, and I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Well, I'm glad you contacted me. It's been
Yeah,
fun talking to you.
well, it's been great. So yeah, we'll have links to Butler Maps and your social media sites and stuff on the episode page. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Greg Drevinson for the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast. Keep your upside down.
If you've enjoyed listening to the Rider Magazine Insider Podcast, please subscribe, leave us a positive rating, and tell your friends. We also encourage you to visit ridermagazine.com, where you can get the latest in motorcycle news and reviews and sign up for our free weekly newsletter. You can also subscribe to print and digital editions of Rider Magazine, which is published 12 times a year. Thanks again for listening.